Okay, so we'll see if my phone stays in the tripod like it's supposed to. We're gonna see. So far, so good. Happy Monday, happy MLK Day. I hope you guys had the day off. I did. It was lovely to have the day off. 3-day weekends are always so nice, but they also always go by so fast. Anyway, I do feel like I got some things done that I wanted to do. Been working on some projects, for my startup, and I'm working on some projects just for myself, right? Still doing homework too. And now we are on to discussing, I guess, the vital sources, right? So, talking about touch and massage in the last couple of weeks. Now we're talking about vital sources and different theories that eventually led to practices including chiropractic and practices including doctors that are DOs, Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine, versus MDs, and how that came about. But it's also talking about kind of more existential uh, body, mind, soul, spirit stuff, but not necessarily in a religious context. So that's why they're referring to it, or the gentlemen who were trying to figure it out 100 and 200 years ago were referring to it as vital source. Something that was outside of our body, something that was bigger than us, something that, caused creation, right? But they weren't calling it creation or creation from God. So it's really interesting, all the different subjects that we end up covering in this program. And I hope that over time, one or two of you might become interested in studying the program, especially if you have some sort of healthcare background related in any way, because it's really freeing to study and learn about all of the things that are there in addition to the traditional Western medicine model, and really think about different ways that people thought about things many years ago and even currently in this country and other countries, and how it affects what we get in the way of healthcare, what we get in the way of just access, right? So someone's starting to think about the fact that they really, even though they're scientists, have to admit that there's something outside of just science that brought us all here, was big doings back in the day. And there was some discussion about Darwin. There was discussion about how he was not really Christian at all. I think atheist, and they thought that he was pretty stiff and pretty, it's all opinions of different people. But it has been interesting to learn, and it's been making me just think about all kinds of things, like stream of consciousness, right? One thing that it may not seem related, but it kind of is like your ancestry, right? So aside from whether you believe in creation, or if you believe in a big boom, or some other nonsense, whatever you believe in of how we got here, then you might also think about how you personally got here to this moment where you are in this moment in time, in whatever city, state, or country you live in, and how you got into your family and all of those things, right? And so I know for me, my family background is pretty blended. I identify as Black, obviously. But at the same time, my genetics have a whole lot of additional things to the story. But that's kind of like the story of Black Americans, right? We're pretty much not homogenous, let's say. And depending on your family history, it could be a lot of things thrown in there. It's interesting now too, because there's a lot more talk about indigenous people to the U.S., and that there were indigenous Africans or indigenous Black people, whatever, however you want to call it, that were here, potentially before slavery, and have gotten erased for various reasons. You know what the reasons are. And then, it opens up the whole question about, anthropologically, how did they get here? When did they get here? How long have they been here? But I remember my aunt telling me, even as a little girl, she's like, those African boat people got everywhere. There's diaspora everywhere. And it's kind of true, right? I mean, you can't go anywhere in South America without seeing people that have some African ancestry. There's people in India with African ancestry. There's people in Italy with African ancestry. There's people in all of the different islands, wherever you want to call it, Asian Pacific Islands, Caribbean islands, Australia, New Zealand, wherever. And, everywhere you want to look outside of Africa, we're there pretty much. And so it only makes sense. I mean, like, does it go all the way back to when, scientists say that the continents broke apart and we were over here and some were over here and some were over here? Was it really people that went everywhere by boat? In addition to, of course, not negating the things that happened in the slave trade. Obviously, that happened too. But it's interesting to think about what all might not be really fully known, or what might have been kind of swept under the rug, and why, and how powerful it would be to really fully know and understand the full story. And so one of my kids did that Ancestry DNA, and she was surprised to learn that she was 40-something% non-Black, even though both parents, me and her father, my ex-husband is the father of both my children, that we're both Black, but DNA says she's 43% or 44 or 40-something%, I don't even know, something other than African. So then I was like, well, what portion of all of that came from me and what portion of that came from him? I know some of the things. I know I have some Welsh background. I know I have Scotch-Irish. I know we have Native, indigenous people background, whether you want to call it Native American. We know a couple of tribes that we're affiliated with, and one of which was on the Trail of Tears, and we have documentation of that. And then, there's Ashkenazi Jewish, there's Filipino. The list is long. And so then you really want to know, like, how the flip, like, what happened? And so I know a lot of those things. And there's also French, because we also have some French and some Spanish ancestry that we're aware of. The French portion, I think, might have originally come in. We have some Haitian ancestry. And I don't know if you're familiar with how Haiti was colonized, but one side was colonized by the French, one side was colonized by the Dutch. And I remember my great-grandmother and my grandmother spoke patois, and that made me want to learn French when I was growing up. So I studied French, but living in Southern California, I probably should have studied Spanish. That would have made more sense. But, it was a family and cultural thing. And I remember my great-grandmother, one of her sayings back in the day was, she was frustrated at something or something someone said, I don't understand that Dutch. And okay. Okay. But, yeah, that portion of my family came into the U.S. through New Orleans. And so you have that French, Spanish, Creole combination with the Haitian ancestry there too. So, the whole melting pot, still you get Black. But anyway, so around Christmas time, they had a special, they being these guys, Ancestry.com. And so, it's the same one my kid did. And I'm like, well, why not? It was dang near free, we'll do it. So the directions are pretty easy. It's basically open the tube, spit in the tube, close the tube, shake the tube, put the tube in the Ziploc, put the Ziploc in the box, mail the box back, and then give you like a box that already has like the tracking and all of that. And then eventually you get results. So I'm not gonna make you watch me spit in the, in the cup, in the little tube, but I will do it after this is over and I'll send it off. It's been sitting on my table for, I don't know, a couple weeks now. So obviously it wasn't a huge priority, but it's come back around and I'm like, let's do it, It'll be interesting to see. It's not gonna change how I feel about myself or anything else. And I'm proud of, who I am and all of the things, but it is interesting to note. And also in the United States, and most Black people average about 20 to 25% non-African for obvious reasons of things that happened. But then there are some of us that have a little bit more, even if it doesn't necessarily look like it. So it can be interesting just for health purposes. Like, I didn't know, I knew I had some Jewish people in my family, but I didn't know it was necessarily Ashkenazi Jewish. And, maybe I need to pay attention to that for healthcare reasons. And different other things, right? But either way, it'll be fun to know and be able to add things to the picture for my kids. I have a couple of cousins who have done it, and we found a couple of relatives we didn't know we had in New Orleans. We have some relatives in New Orleans who are what you call Pesson Blanc. Those who know. And some are this particular last name that we say in English, and some are the same last name pronounced in French. And the one group of them have been white for so long they may not really realize that they're not white until maybe they have a beige baby, we don't know. And some were very light and chose not to pass. And so, New Orleans is a very interesting place. There's also some stories about Haiti that, well, let me back up. Have you ever heard people talk about crazy Creole women or crazy Creoles in general? I'm not saying our folks are crazy, because I got some folks, but that mental illness can run sometimes in the group, even though, beautiful people, all kinds of fun things, can cook like none other, all that stuff. But, there's some history that says that France in particular shipped out some of their mentally ill people and dropped them off on Haiti. And then, as colonizers do, they mixed in with the people that they were controlling, sometimes willingly and sometimes by force. But, if you have certain predispositions, that can pass through the genes too. So who knows? It could also be sometimes people were trying to keep their families looking a certain way. And, it's a New Orleans thing to ask and make sure you don't have same last names as people when you meet them, just to make sure you're being careful. And I have actually met some folks here in Southern California that turned out to be relatives. I remember one time I saw this dude, and we never like dated or talked or anything like that. My mom cleared that up really fast. There was a store that's not here anymore. It's called Fedco. And Fedco feels like the predecessor to like a Costco or Cost Plus. I don't even think Cost Plus exists anymore anyway. But Fedco, the LA people would know, it used to be on La Cienega and Rodeo Road before it became Obama Boulevard. But anyway, so state and federal workers could go in, you had a card. There was a lot of fun memories with people for LA from Fedco. But I was preteen, teenager. And I saw this dude and I was like, dang, he is cute. I think he had like this really pretty kind of caramel reddish complexion and green eyes. And I was like, oh, okay. And we were kind of looking at each other. He was looking at me like I was cute too. And then my mom and I bumped back into each other's store. You know how when you're a teenager, you don't want to be with your mom in the store or whatever. And I looked at the guy, he looked at me, my mom said, oh, you see your cousin so-and-so. I was just talking to his mom. We haven't seen each other in so long. And I was like, ah, dang it. But that's as far as it went. I'm like, all right, well, I have a cute cousin. Nice to meet you. But that's another good reason why those of us that have some of these backgrounds, you really need to know who your folks are. You don't want to run into your cousins. And so we'll see. It'll be fun. And I'll let you know if anything fun pops up. I think it's always good to know a little bit more. You know, we have a lot of stories that are passed down from, you know, oral history and things like that. But it's also good to have some things in paper. We have in my family a document from, I guess it was my grandfather's grandfather who fought in the Civil War. And prior to that, he had been a slave, and he was sold by his father, who was a slaveholder. And the father acknowledged that that was his son. He was very fair. I think he was by a mulatto mama also, and the description of him, you know, describes him actually with fair skin, and they said gray eyes. I don't know exactly what gray eyes look like, but that's what's on the documentation. And maybe they meant like gray-green, who knows. But eventually he was able to buy himself out of slavery. The story goes that his dad sold him without feeding him, even though he, you know, did recognize that that was his son and everything like that. But down the line, he was able to buy himself out of it, probably mostly because he was pretty fair and all of that. And then that he married a Native American who, by marrying her, she and her two brothers did not have to go live on the reservation. And this was happening all in like the area of Trail of Tears and all of that. So we're affiliated with that tribe, yes. And that's all documented as well. But then they had 17 children, including a couple sets of twins. And the 17th one was my grandfather's father, or else I wouldn't be sitting here. I was like, dang, that was a strong woman to pop out that many kids, survive all of that. Imagine, you know, we weren't doing C-sections that much or at all, really, I guess, right? And to have multiples, and I think the record shows that she only lost one kid. So that's pretty miraculous. And then that 17th one was my grandfather's grandfather. And here we are. So, you know, my dream, like dream would be to go on the show Finding Your Roots. Like, I don't even really care about being on the show, although it's super cool. I want the book. I want the family tree. Like, I want to meet Henry Louis Gates. He's so cool. And I would love to hear, you know, I have a lot of family history, probably more than a lot of other Black people. We were able to track a lot of things on multiple stems, but the stories are so interesting. I'd love to be able to, you know, double validate some things and also learn some more. So Henry Louis Gates, if you ever see this, I want to be on your show. Or I just want somebody to do my family tree as thoroughly as you guys do. But anyway, that's like that's like a show where I'd fan out. Like I've seen, living in LA, you see a lot of celebrities and other people, and it's like, oh, there goes so-and-so, whatever. And half the time, you know, you want to just leave them alone. And they love it when you leave them alone and just let them have their moment with their family or their moment out, and you're not like jumping all over them. A lot of times they appreciate that. But if I saw him, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I love your show. Anyway, I know I'm being silly, but tell me if you have any fun stories about learning about your family history. If you've used Ancestry DNA or the other, there's like another one that does, another company that does the same thing. And I think there's even a Black woman that's doing like very specific deep dive where you are from in Africa, DNA studies. And so I'd love to hear if you have any fun finds. Let's talk tomorrow. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell a friend. Have a good evening.